Hey guys, I'm out here at Memorial Park in Wilsonville, Oregon, enjoying this glorious day. It's so beautiful out here. Look at the scene behind me. The colors in those trees are gorgeous, and the contrast with the dark branches, it just is inspiring to me. It makes me want to go home and paint, and really love right behind me how that dark background just makes the gorgeousness of that tree pop. So what I want to do is go home and paint it. And first of all, what I'm going to do is grab a bunch of leaves that kind of show me the variety of colors, and I'll attempt to color match that when I get back home. But in the meantime, I'm just here reveling in the beauty of all of this. And I got a friend. Hey, baby. Hi there. There he goes. Other people out here enjoying the color. It's so pretty. And it's still warm enough to get out and enjoy it. Okay, I am back home and in my studio with a little plate full of autumn leaves. So I wasn't able to come into my studio right away. So what I did was got my plate and a wet paper towel and just kept them in my fridge for a little while, covered them up. So set that aside for a sec. I've got a dry paper towel on top of my watercolor block here. And so I have a great variety. Look at all these beautiful colors. I love the green in this one. This is the glowing yellow you see, and when the sun shines from behind, it's backlit, and it just makes that whole tree just glow. And same with these. They've got some oranges and some of that yellow, a little bit of maybe deep green in there. These are also gorgeous. Just a beautiful burnt burgundy. I guess you could say that was a burnt-ish burgundy. And so a few of those guys, and I've got a couple more of this has got even a tinge of green to it. This has a little combination with the green and the yellow and that burgundy mottled look up there. They're so pretty. So good variety. And then look at this one. It's just starting to turn from its green summer color into that burgundy, which will eventually turn to this. It's amazing, isn't it? How beautiful these colors are, and how it actually happens, and they transform in the fall, just like they just know that it's time to go to sleep, and so they go to sleep. But before they do, we get all this gorgeous color. So I am going to reference those, but what I'll do here is take this block, which is a Legion, show you the front, or Stonehenge, excuse me, Stonehenge Legion Aqua Coldpress. This is a 12 by 16 block, acid-free, 100% cotton, and it's white, and it's a really bright white. So I like painting on bright white because the colors seem to just pop a bit more. So I'm going to show you an easy way just to speed things up and make it a little bit easier if you don't feel like sketching this out. And I'm going to say, keep in mind that when you're pressing into the paper, there's a chance that these colors will dye the paper. And I'm not going to worry about that because we're working with, some pretty irregular color anyway. And so that kind of plays into that whole look. So, got it fairly flat. This is dry, so this one was drier than the rest of them. That's why I'm using it. And I'm just going to trace around it. Just hold it in place and very loosely go around all of those edges. It does not have to be exact or perfect. We just want the basic shape of this leaf. And to me, this is a easy way to do it and quick. You can get multiple leaves on here, and even don't have to have exactly all those little jaggedy edges, because you can use your paintbrush to pull that paint up into a jaggedy edge. And we will take a look at what that looks like when we get started with the paint. Okay, so let's bring a little bit of that down there. Okay, so only a tiny little bit of that leaf color got on there, and again, I'm not at all worried about it. So, I mean, they're pretty close to the same. I might want a little bit of a smaller size. Let's just turn them in different ways so they're more interesting. And I'm just going to kind of keep on going with this until I have several that I can play around with adding color to. So just, again, just tracing around the basic shape of it. And that's it. You could take a photo, I suppose, and then trace around the photo. But I'm working on a block, so that's another reason. I don't want to take the paper off of this block to be able to put it up in a window or light box or whatever. So I'm just doing it this way. All right, I'm going to keep on going with this, and then we'll start adding some color. All right, I am surrounded by inspiration and just so fun. Excited to do this, but I wanted to talk about the colors I'm using first of all. So I've chosen some bright colors, and then I've chosen some of the complements. For instance, for the reds, I've got a complementary color of green, so I can kind of tone down the red if I need to. I've got natural color here in the burnt sienna, got ultramarine blue for mixing some of the other colors. I do have, most of them are core, and you'll see when you see how they go down on the paper, how beautiful they are, and the reason that I chose to use them, because they just burst when you put them into the water and into other colors. They just have a way of moving in the water and paint that I just love. This over here is Winsor & Newton Opera Rose, and that one's just a brilliant color. You can't really use it straight out of the tube to get any of those fall colors, but you can mix it with some of the others to make just a brilliant orange. So love that color. I'm also using Daniel Smith Nicolazo Yellow. right here. And this also just has a way of pushing away the other colors. So you get this beautiful glow when you add it, drop it in that way and just kind of let it flow and spread on its own. Love that color. I also put out here a beautiful luminescent color by Daniel Smith. It's Duochrome Saguaro Green. And that one, it's really cool to splatter it over the top of paint that's not really wet, but not quite all the way dry, so it kind of softens a little bit. You can still see that luminescent quality, and it's really a fun paint to work with. So that's Daniel Smith Duochrome Saguaro Green. And the rest of these, I've got, this is Winsor & Newton, also a Winsor & Newton color. It is Quinacradone Red. This is Daniel Smith Permanent Red. Burnt Umber I may or may not use. Hooker's Green is from Daniel Smith. Also, Green Gold is Daniel Smith. This is Hansa Yellow Light. That's a core color. This is Magenta, Quinacradone Magenta, and that is also a core color. This is Quinacradone Gold Deep. So I need to put a little bit more of that out there. And I need to get these moistened up because some of them have been sitting a little while, overnight probably. So let's just get a little moisture going. Even though that is straight out of the tube and it's fresh paint right now, it kind of still, it's hard to get it to liquefy enough. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to get a head start on it. And my easel is tipped down a little bit. You can see that. I think I'm going to flatten it out just a little bit. So when I add the water to the paper, as you'll see here in a second, if it's tipped up too much, by the time I get to the bottom of where I'm trying to moisten, the top part has dried out. So I'm going to try to eliminate that. And you probably cannot see the drawing, but it is there. Trust me. I'm going to start over on this one. That way I'm not dragging my hand across wet paint if I started here. So little details, you know. Brush I'll be using is going to be this number 6 Velvet Touch Long Round. I like it. Holds a lot of paint and water, also releases it well. But I can also, with this tip, get into some of those tiny areas and also drag out some of the areas that I want to have some jagged edges. So my first step here is getting it wet where I want to start painting. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom of this. Maybe that'll help keep it moister, because I want the whole leaf wet, because where the water goes, the paint flows, and I want my paint to flow all over the place. So if the water's all over the place, guess what? That paint is going to be going into that area as well. And so bear with me as I get this leaf wet. And we will start having some fun slapping our color down. I'm keeping an eye also on the moisture by looking at it from an angle. The light is hitting the paper, and I can see where there's still a sheen and where it has dried out. So I'll come back into the areas that dried out a little bit. I want to have a sheen. I don't want that sheen to go away. Once it goes away, you lose that ability for the paint to really flow and flood around your area. So it's starting to collect here at the bottom. I'm just going to push it up a little bit. Use the water that I have on the paper. And you'll notice I'm coming up on the tip and then using the body of the brush. The body of the brush is going to cover much more area. And right here, these two little leaves kind of intersect and meet. Stem's going behind that one. Okay, so I'm going to start with this Quinacradone Gold Deep, and add to that, what do I want to add to that? Let's add a little bit of this red. If you're looking to color match, that's a pretty good match. So Permanent Red by Daniel Smith. I've got Holbein Quinacradone Gold Deep, and just kind of has a blood red to it. And I'm looking up here thinking I better start right away, adding just a touch more water up here with a different brush, because it's starting to get dry enough where it's not going to flow like I want it to. So that's why I did that. Okay, so now I'm just going to touch my brush, and look how that just floods the paper. Tip of my brush. It's just flooding wherever that water has been placed. That paint is just going to flood into it. I'm going to rinse my brush, grab some of this Nicolazo yellow, and just plop it in. And I'm going to come over here and just do it all by itself. A little bit more water into it. And you see how that water is just a vessel for the paint to flow. I'm going to drop in a little bit more water in here to get a little bit more movement and modeling. I'm going to add some of this magenta. A lot of water down here, so I'm going to get my brush dried off and soak up some of that, because what's going to happen is this beautiful vibrant color comes down into that and dilutes, and you lose the vibrancy when it dries. A little bit more water in here. A bit more of that yellow. See how that just pushes the paint away? It's stunning. Absolutely stunning. Just kind of let your brush dance around as you're dropping that paint in. Don't be really stiff and controlled. Just let your brush have some fun. That was burnt sienna I just picked up with that last scoop. It's giving it a little darker. And as I'm looking down here on this leaf, we've got a little bit of green, so just a tiny touch. Maybe just a little bit of watered down ultramarine. A ton of water on this paper. That's why I can keep adding the color. This dried a little bit too much here, but I'm not terribly worried about it. I can kind of moisten it up a little bit and spread it around. If I add a little bit of water and then a little bit of thicker paint, where my paint isn't quite so watery, I can just kind of fix that. A little bit more nickel hazel. Look at how that pushes that away. Just, it's beautiful. Still picking up a little bit of that water. Tiniest little touches of that hooker's green. I don't want it to overpower anything. If I put it next to the red, it neutralizes that a little bit. So we've got a couple of little splotches that were a little concentrated there. Now I can see that this is puddling kind of here in the middle. So let me add a little bit more paint so when it dries, it's not going to look weird. Experiment with your color. After this is drier, we're going to come in and lift out some of the veins from this. But right now I'm just touching in a little bit more thicker of that Quinacradone. Gold Deep. And right here, just a little highlight. And that is the nickel hazel yellow. All right, let's let that dry and we can come back and work on that. I may take a hair dryer to the center part just so it doesn't dry so much slower that it causes a blossom. So I'll do that and then we'll come back and do some of the detail work. This is dry, but I realized I forgot to splatter on some of that Saguaro green. And it might actually be better that it's completely dry, because it'll just sit on top and I can manipulate it a little bit. So actually, what I'll do here is spritz just a little bit. I don't know if I'll be able, that one is not a good spritzer. Let's just take this big one there and spritz a little moisture, dab up a smidgen of it, and then see what happens. It doesn't, and you can probably see that it doesn't liquefy like some of the other paint colors, but let's just see. This little brush here is my favorite splattering brush. Not quite wet enough though. But it gives a really cool look. So I'm just gonna put a couple of little splatters here and there. Kind of fun. And as long as I'm doing it with that, maybe a little of this burnt umber, see, some of that isn't quite as wet, but maybe I can splatter a little bit of water over it to help it move a little bit. Got a tissue handy here just to soak up a tiny bit of water. I don't care that it's splattered outside. I think that's kind of cool. I'm thinking about maybe doing that, if I remember, at the end. All right, I think that's pretty cool, actually. So I'm going to move on, let that dry a little bit, move on to this leaf over here. And this time I'm going to do a different color. I think I'll go with more of that, maybe more. I like this one too. But I like this one too. Maybe, let's take a look and see. Maybe a combination, I don't know. I can do whatever I want because I'm the artist. And it doesn't have to look exactly like the leaf. We can branch out. If I can be a dork, we can branch out and just do our own thing. It doesn't have to be photorealistic, I guess you could say. We just can have fun with it. I find that when I lose the expectations of making it look like something, I need it to look exactly like that leaf. Nobody's gonna know that it doesn't look like the leaf you were looking at when you painted it. So grab that. That's the 4. Go back to my 6 long round for some of these tiny little, and there's water up there, so the paint can make its way into the very tip of that leaf. Same thing here, it'll flow right down into that stem. . So if you find that you've done this little exercise here and your colors aren't vibrant, make sure, and I'm going to say it many times in my videos, that you're using professional grade paint and you're on professional grade paper, because you will be disappointed when you spend all the time that you spend painting and practicing and your colors turn out dull. It's not very fun. It's like just anticlimactic. You want to come back when your paint is dry and see this beautiful piece. So this time I need to start with, or I don't need to, I'm going to start with my nickel azo yellow and mix it with a little bit of that Hansa and a touch, just a touch of can't paint and talk at the same time. Just a touch of the opera. Very transparent. I like a little bit of that Saguaro in there too. Look at how that also has a little bit of red in it. So I'm just gonna go with that. Come up around those pencil lines. Just let those colors mix and mingle, flow together. Add just a touch of the gold deep. That's a little bit dry right up in here, so I'm gonna get a little bit more water on my brush. Look at that spread. I'm going to soak up some of this water down here. That's going to dilute too much and it'll dry lighter than I want it to. So picking up a little bit of that while allowing some of it to stay, so I get a little bit of movement. And you see the tip of this brush can just drag some of those little edges. I'm thinking about the pencil lines up in here that maybe I don't necessarily want them to show through. And maybe I'm worrying too much about it, but I'd rather not. And we can go in and clean it up later too. So I'd love that. So this is really pretty. The Saguaro and the Umber, that burnt umber. So let's go into some of these areas that are still a little wetter. And it's too much. I want kind of a water-y mix here because I want to splatter some in and have it spread around a little bit. See if that works. Not so much. Maybe just a little bit of water and then the nickel azo. That just seems to push the color away so nice. Just touching in a little bit of water there so I can get it to flow around a little bit better. And I want to grab a little bit more of that saguaro and splatter it in. Need quite a bit of it. Can you see how beautiful that is? How shimmery? I hope you can see it. Doesn't show up too much. Because the contrast isn't there, but I think when it dries, you'll be able to see a lot more shimmer. And I think I want this to have more paint in it so when it dries, it does have kind of a fun little edge on it. Just kind of dragging that up there so get a little bit more color in that area. That's looking really pretty. Love it. I love nickel azo yellow. It really gives that glow that I see in those beautiful maple leaves. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I could probably get carried away. But I don't care right now. I'm just gonna keep adding it to my leaf here. And I could tip my paper like this and kind of move that paint around up out of that area where it's settling. Just kind of tip it around. And set it up a little bit more level because I do want to couple of splatters of this darker. Before it's dry. Once that sheen goes away, I have lost the opportunity for movement. But I like this, so I don't want to take it too much further. Maybe a few little blossoms here and there. But other than that, I'm just going to let this one dry and come back and finish up with the veins that we see. And maybe some more splatters of that saguaro on top of this after it dries. Okay, let's let it dry. Wow, so these are dry, and that saguaro green, I'm in love with that. That is so gorgeous. If I can tip it around, I don't know if you can even really see that, but it's gorgeous. It really adds character. Oh my gosh, I'm in love with that. I hesitate to even splatter, but I just want to see what, if anything, looks different. Not really. Maybe with a little of the umber in there and the red. Let's see what that does. Just a couple little splatters. I don't want to get carried away. I love this. This one's beautiful too. The saguaro just stands out a lot more on that. This one just has a beautiful glow to it that I really was wanting to achieve. So what I want to do now is put this aside for a minute. And I have a Eradicator brush by Rosemary and Company. It's very, very cool for lifting out fine little lines. And that's what I want to do. If you don't have this brush, you could, if you have something like this, this is how it has a fairly stiff bristle, and it's not quite as fine tipped as this one, but you could still use it kind of up on its edge to lift out some of the lines that we're going to lift out here. Maybe you could use some white gouache, mix in a little of your color. Maybe not, maybe just white. Sometimes the white stands out too much, so I like to add a little color to it, but try it both ways. See which way you like better. And I'm just going to grab a paper towel that's clean. I want to make sure that my paper towel doesn't have any other paint colors on it, because I'll be lifting out and dabbing back onto the painting. And if there's color on this, sometimes it comes off. I've done that and been so frustrated because it was like in a part of the painting that didn't have that particular color. So anyway, let's go ahead and choose one of our leaves here. Get this one. And just kind of note that right from the stem is where those veins come out of. We've got one coming up into that point, one coming up into that point, this point, and so on. And then there's some that are staggered coming up on either side. Now, I don't want to put every single vein in there because it starts to look a little bit overdone. So I just want to put a couple and maybe even break up the line a little bit. So that tip is kind of going this way. So I'm going to start a little too much water on there. Start pulling that paint up. Some of it might not come up as easy. If it's a staining color, it will have stained the paper, so you won't be able to pull it up as easy. So I'm just going to come down with this first one all the way down into the stem down here. And you can pick it, dab it up with your paper towel to get it closer to back to the light of the paper. But for the most part, I think these colors are fairly staining. Not as transparent, but that's okay because, you know, it gives it kind of a broken look anyway when I can't get all of it the same. I'm going to come up right from that stem. That's coming up easier right there, so I'm going to go with that. If it's not coming up, I'm just going to go right by it and not keep scrubbing. This side is pointing this way, so I'm gonna start actually this way. Come from the bottom. Actually, need to be more up on my tip than that. So a little bit more vertical, holding that brush a little bit more vertical. I'll have to come back to that when it's a little drier. It's a lot of staining color right there, so I'll just go right by it. And I'll probably end up adding a little accent line alongside of it, like it's the shadow. Like if you look at your leaf closely, it looks a little darker along the sides sometimes. This one you can see it a little bit more, it's a little darker, so that'll help that pop out a little bit. And I can come right here to this tip, vertical on my brush. Right here in this corner, there's a vein that kind of comes up from the stem there. and forks out. So that's kind of an interesting one to add. It's very subtle. Doesn't have to be overstated. That looks good. And let's see what happens here. I'm not sure we're going to get a lot of contrast. We might have to do this more with the shadowing. Or with a little bit of gouache. That looks pretty darn cool. I'm really happy with it. I'm gonna do a little bit of glazing over the top of those colors. I'm gonna get a brush without such a fine point, because I don't want to dig into the paint that's already there. Go with my number 4, just regular round. It doesn't come to quite so fine of a tip. So what I want to do here is get this a little wet. I know one thing, that when I touch the green, it's gonna spread. So I have to be careful if I want to preserve that, to kind of work around it a little bit. But I want the paper just a little bit wet, so when I come in to add a little darker color, it has a softer edge. And I just want to darken up a few little areas around that vein. And I can also put it down and then rinse my brush and just kind of touch and spread it around a little bit. And some of these I kind of think I do want to just soften up a little bit. Number 2, Utrecht. I'm getting a little bit of the burnt umber and my Winsor and Newton Quinacradone red. Just darkening that up a little bit with some gold in there, and I just want a very fine line along a couple of those. Again, being careful not to get carried away with that. It's really easy to do. You think a little here is going to be good, why not do it a little over here and a little over there, and pretty soon you've got lines all over that look kind of funny. There's a couple places where it didn't lift. And I'm just dragging my hand. Giving it some character. Kind of zigzagging a little bit. All right, I'm going to stop this right now. I'll finish those up later, but I want you to go out and have some fun, grab some foliage and bring it back to your studio. Get out your paints and paper, get out your brushes, and slap down some color. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked the video, you like what you see, you want to see more, even give me some suggestions of what you'd like me to paint. So put that in the comments below and I'll take a look and see what I can do about that. So happy painting. Take care, you guys. Till next time. Bye-bye.